This is the Fantasy Ladder Podcast, episode 25. Week one is finally here, so I'm beyond excited. I'm going to bring on a special guest here in just a little bit. Basically, what we're going to be doing today is breaking down every matchup for week one, but extremely excited that football is finally here. Just wanted to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by the IDP Guys Podcast Network. So, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to Apple and Spotify and all that good stuff. So you never miss a show from me, Steve at Fantasy Ladder, or from anyone else who puts out content for the IDP Guys Network. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my special guest. We have Ralph, otherwise known as Lobo. You can find him on Twitter at LobosFFDen. So Lobo, how you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal, dude. Every time I'm with you, it's phenomenal. I'm
That's
glad.
right. Yeah, it's never a question of if you're doing good. It's just how good are you doing. So I love it.
And doing great. And football's 2 days away, so I mean, I can't really complain. College football got us off, and I think they spoiled us a little bit because that first week for college football was a chef's kiss. So if we can get some matchups like that this weekend, I am thrilled.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of that, can you remind me, is there a favorite college football team that you especially follow, or do you just kind of follow it all in preparation for your dynasty squads, or is there a
I,
favorite team?
I am just scouting it out. I am just scouting it out for my college team, and for the one Devy league that I'm in, and probably number will change at some point. But for now, yes, it's scouting it out for my fantasy teams. But enjoy college football. I think it's great, and obviously see some of these younger guys really just their kids out there crushing it, and the way they're doing it's insane. So I just enjoy it.
Yeah, it is interesting. Just having gone to Penn State and just being like classmates with some of the players now being 33 and looking back and watching, watching them play. It's just like, wow, like they were literal children at the time.
Yeah.
It's like so
Yep.
it's amazing. But yes, speaking of Penn State, that was a really insane first game result
It
against
was.
Purdue. That was a good sweat. I really missed that feeling. I was preparing for heartbreak. 7 lead changes. I just couldn't handle it. But
Phenomenal
I'm
game.
just so glad that football is back, but especially the NFL. So that was a
Yes.
lovely transition there. So we both are obviously very excited for football to be here, especially fantasy football. So
Yes. Yep. Yep.
we are league mates in a number of leagues. I don't believe we are playing each other in any of them this week, so I will preemptively give you a legitimate good luck this week, but when we're playing each other, it won't be as true and honest. But either way, just curious here, how many leagues are you playing in this year?
That's a great question that my wife, I'm glad she will probably never listen to this podcast, but I'm in right around 25 leagues. So
Yeah,
um,
okay.
it's a record one. And I think going into it, and even looking at my lineups earlier today, um, it takes a lot. I mean, you're going through and you're manning and going through and controlling all of them. And so it's going to be interesting. But yes, I am 25. But I will say it's tough to quit it when you've got so many leagues that you enjoy and the people and just the atmosphere of the leagues. And so but it's a lot of fun.
No, definitely. Yeah, I had to do a little roundup myself, and part of the problem is it's a lot of leagues, but it's also on multiple platforms, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
the final tally I had was 21 on Sleeper, 4 on ESPN,
Oh
and
no.
1 on MFL. And that one, of course, is Scott Fish
It's
Bowl.
got
So
fishbowl.
we're all very excited for that.
Yes.
But yeah, so it's a lot. It definitely is a lot to manage it all. So being in basically the same amount of leagues that I'm in, just roughly one or more, um, less or whatever. How many of those are best balls? You in any best balls where you
It's
don't need to set lineups or?
it's two best balls.
Oh,
Two best
okay,
balls out of
gotcha.
all those. Yeah. Everything else I am managing on my own. So it's gonna be some maintenance.
Yeah. So typically when people are in like 20 or more leagues, half of them are best balls where you
Best
just don't
balls.
need to touch it.
Nope.
I'm in 0 best balls. So I am going to be a very busy guy, especially on Sunday mornings, which is a problem because my Sunday mornings are already very busy. So what's your Sunday morning routine like?
My Sunday morning routine is one that I've been doing ever since we moved um, here to Phoenix, Arizona, and it's always been wake up in the morning, and it's for most of the year. It's beautiful weather by the time football season kicks off. So I love to actually just go, and I like to wash my car every Sunday right before. It's just the tradition I've gotten into. I go and get a coffee. I get home, and I know it's going to be 7 hours of commercial-free football. Thank you, Scott Hansen, for that.
Oh yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. Most of the time, I like to meal prep so that way I'm not having to do anything but other than watch football. I will say, if my Cowboys are playing Sunday night, which is the week 1 matchup against the Bucks for the second year in a row, unfortunately, um, then
Yeah.
I do like to always either order some wings or pizza. If they're playing that Sunday night game, it gives it a little bit more of that excitement. But that's my typical routine, and it's been going on 7-8 years. It's consistent.
There you go. Yeah, I like the routine you have in
Yep.
place with washing the car. Nice thing to kind of clear your mind, just give you something, not just your phone to stare at. Just like a crazy person. Um, Now, are you just like tinkering like your lineups throughout the week, or a lot of the leagues that we're in are like mostly dynasty leagues where you have your clear starters, you have your clear depth guys where you don't need to tinker too much, especially probably early in the season. So
Yep.
what's that like for you? Do you just like check it like once a day, just make sure like nothing has
Yep.
like magically switched around, or what's that
I
like for you?
I will never forget. I want to say it was 3 years ago, and it was a Marlon Mack game, and it was getting really close to the playoffs, and he was questionable, and I set it and forget it, and thought, you know what? I know he's questionable, but everything that I'm reading reports are he's going to play. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to do it. And it was one of the bigger leagues at the time that I was in. I let Marlon Mack just kind of just hang out in that flex, never checked it, and he ended up not playing, and I lost that week, which then resulted in me not making the playoffs that
Oh
year
man.
because of that one loss. And so now, to your point, what I do, Steve, is usually on Wednesday nights, I'm checking my lineups, making sure I like them. And then on Thursday mornings, I check them just one more time for those questionable people, just to make sure that that I'm in a good spot. And then once that happens, if I'm in a good spot and I'm chilling for the rest of the week, great. I don't check my lineups again until Saturday evening or Sunday morning. As soon as I get back home with my coffee, I like to sit my butt on that couch and go through some of the lineups if I'm questioning any of them. But yeah, that's typically the routine.
Yeah, so once we get rolled into the season, that there is this much more of like a daily rhythm, right? So
Yep.
like
Yeah.
Tuesday nights, you got to set your waivers or your fab, amounts, and then Wednesday you see the results of that, and then you're kind of playing around with little trade ideas and stuff until Thursday night, which when the first game is. Then there's the big long wait on Friday, Saturday, and then eventually to Sunday. So for me, just if I'm already looking through my waivers or trying to cook up trades,
Mhm.
I'm constantly looking at. The problem is though, is because there's so many leagues I'm
Mhm.
in, if there are those questionable players, that's where it can really make things
Yep.
especially difficult on Sunday morning, because it's like if you say you have 10 leagues with like Alexander Madison in, and
Yep.
Dalvin Cook is questionable all week, and then he's like a late ruling out on like Sunday morning, during warmups or something, then you have to scramble, and it can get really ugly. So, I think there is a bit of tinkering I do, but then you get into this rhythm that you just have to kind of keep consistent.
Yep.
But then again, it's like that's why some people, probably like healthier people, will only play in a handful of leagues and not 20 plus. But like you said, I just enjoy it too much. Just the friends you make, either
Yep.
online or longtime friends.
Yeah.
Our long running home league is in our 18th season this year.
That's
It's
awesome.
just unbelievable. I mean, a lot of people have come and gone over the time,
Right.
but there's a pretty solid core of like 7 of us who have been in there since we were sophomores in high school. It's unbelievable. But
Yeah.
now I'm like really aging myself. But either way, um, yeah. So I just was curious to see how you handle that whirlwind that can be
Mhm.
a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it seems like you got a pretty nice routine down. I will try to come up with something like that, although my house is just endlessly chaotic with the 2 little boys kind of just raising hell, so it's just a little tricky, but just trying to find a little quiet corner of the room just to do last minute stuff. But
Yeah.
either way, I was just curious about that. So obviously very excited. We have week 1 coming up here. Finally, the long wait is finally here. The NFL draft was all the way back in April. We had a very exciting dynasty rookie draft season, but we are sitting on these teams, sitting on these teams.
Yep.
Now we're finally ready to see how it's going to play out. So last year, I did a start sit column for IDP guys on the website. I'm not doing that this year, so I'm doing it in this medium. Basically, my system was if I could trust whether I thought the players, if I could trust them, if I thought they were going to bust, or it was kind of borderline if you must. So I had to get a little rhyming in there to make it a little bit, make it
Yep.
stick a little bit better. So we're not exactly going to go through that system, but I do try to kind of constantly keep that in mind because a lot of
Mhm.
these matchups, you are just going to be able to trust how you drafted, but that doesn't necessarily mean you want to just stick to how you drafted because a lot maybe has changed just within the last week. And there's several instances where all of a sudden someone has popped up to be questionable. Like,
Yep.
for example, Alan Lazard had no idea he was dealing with an
Out of
injury
nowhere.
out of nowhere, right? Like I'm not at Packers camp. Like how am I supposed to know until this report comes out where he was like a pretty surefire flex option? Now I'm
Yeah.
not so sure, so that's kind of an if you must slash something to watch until the last minute, but you probably already have something ready to go here. So either
Yeah.
way, just going to run through the matchups, see where we align, in who we like and who we don't like.
Yep.
Kicking off, of course, Thursday night football. The Bills at the LA Rams. So the Super Bowl champion LA Rams are hosting the dynamic Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
I would be willing to say start most of your Bills only
Yep.
because it's a Thursday night. Obviously Josh Allen, we're not benching Josh Allen in any format,
No.
obviously, right? But there are some pieces in that offense that are a little bit questionable
Mhm.
in terms of how much playing time, how much target potential is there, right?
Yep.
So Stefan Diggs, another one we don't need to worry about. If you have Diggs, you're starting him. Now, Gabe Davis, I know you're a big fan of Gabe Davis. A lot of people are drafting him as the wide
Yeah.
receiver 2 on their team, as the wide receiver 3 on their team. Now, because of the dynamic of it being a Thursday night game,
Mhm.
would you feel comfortable having Gabe in your flex spot, or would you kind of throw him in the wide receiver 2 if you could help it? Where you're at there?
I would throw Gabe as my wide receiver too.
Okay.
I feel confident in that, and the reason I say that is I was just talking earlier with Justin Henry, and we were talking about the over unders of what we have for Stefan Diggs and for Gabe Davis. Now, I will say the one thing, Stefan Diggs right now, there's going to be a lot of man on man, and he's going to have the man over there for the Rams, Jalen Ramsey, on him. And what I think that really translates to, especially in this game, is we're going to see the Bills light it up regardless, whether it's Stefan Diggs, whether it's Gabe Davis, whether it is Josh Allen doing it with his legs, whatever the way that it's going to be, they're going to score some points. And unfortunately, I think Stefan Diggs might see a little bit of a downgrade because Jalen Ramsey is on him. And what we're going to see is Gabe Davis really come out, and I mean he should have a good game. And so I would feel very confident with Gabe Davis as my wide receiver 2 in that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, another sort of questionable player as far as I'm concerned is running back Devin Singletary,
100%.
right?
100%.
Uh, a lot of zero RB drafters out there. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe have come away with him as their RB2, maybe as like their flex option, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
To me, because it's against the Rams, I would not want him in my flex spot.
Yeah.
If he's your RB2, I mean, you basically have to roll with him. I wouldn't expect much. But basically, it's kind of like a touchdown dependent kind of an
Mhm.
evening, right? I
Mhm.
think a lot of it is going to fall on Josh Allen to kind of throw a little bit more, just to kind of keep up with the pace of the Rams offense as well. So he's one where I'm kind of like, like if I have to, like he's kind of like an if you must, right?
Right.
Where if I have him, I'm really not wanting to play him. I'm just kind of hoping he does fall into the end zone. Now, it was an interesting one because we threw out some questions for people to ask for this
Mhm.
show. So one of the questions that I came across was someone had so their starting lineup looks like this. David Montgomery, Travis Etienne as the running backs,
Okay.
Jamar Chase, Stefan Diggs as the wide receivers. We're probably
Right.
not going to be touching those, right?
No.
In the flex spot, he had, considering um, Devin Singletary, Hunter Renfrow, or Robert Woods. So in this case, what I suggested, and if you have a different answer,
Yeah,
please
absolutely.
feel free. I suggested to lean or to kind of pivot off of Devin Singletary and go Hunter Renfrow or even Robert Woods. Now, in this case, it's only because he's not going to be playing Singletary over ETN. He's not going to be playing Singletary over Montgomery. I would not advise that. And he's definitely not going to be benching Chase or Diggs for Renfro or Woods. So I basically said I look at the over under numbers for the Rams game and the Chargers and Raiders game. So
Mm-hmm.
right now the Rams and Bills is at 52.5 and the Chargers and Raiders is at 52. So high scoring game possibility. Now
Yeah.
the Giants and Titans, which we'll cover in a second, is at 43 points. So I think that's just like a Derrick Henry smash kind of a game. So if
Yeah.
Woods doesn't get a lot of production early in the game, then it could just be one of those like floor kind of performances for
Mhm.
Robert Woods. But I think Renfro, because that game could just be completely electric against the Chargers, I'm saying I think you can replicate the possibility of Singletary getting a touchdown just with Renfro's catches. And I
Yep.
think that the catches alone, that the yardage there could probably equate to what Singletary can do on the ground against that really scary Rams defensive front. So that was my line of thinking, just to get Singletary out of the flex, just
Mhm.
keep it open to either Renfro or Woods. Where would you fall on that quandary?
I think you went with the right one. I think that's 100% the move. Renfro, to your point, is the safest bet. He has become that PPR blanket for a lot of people that we're so used to. And I think with Hunter Renfro, it's going to be just the same. And you bring up a very good point. That last game when they played in that Week 18 showdown last year for the playoffs,
Yeah.
that was an amazing game. And I mean, I think we see something very similar there. And I just looked it up because I was really curious when you mentioned that. I was looking up at the fantasy points that Hunter Renfro scored last season in their matchups against the Chargers, and both times it was 16 points actually.
Okay.
So in that Week 18 showdown, 16.9, and then in their Week 4, it was a 16.5. So I mean, I think that's what you're going to get from Renfro, though, and that's what you expect. You're expecting that 8 to 80, that maybe 6 for 70 and a touchdown. Like that's what we've come to learn from Hunter Renfro. So I think you made the right move in saying go with Renfro. He's your safest bet because when and there's also so much to be said about Robert Woods, which would just be a whole other conversation of is he going to be 100% healthy? What does
That's
that
right.
look like? How is Tannehill going to look? I mean, there's just so many question marks there that's a whole different story. But yes, I think Hunter Renfro was the move there.
Gotcha. Perfect. Yeah. So there are these situations
Yep.
where someone like Devin Singletary, even though you may have drafted him as a starter, perhaps you can pivot away
Yep.
for this specific circumstance. So I think we got the Bills down. I think the Rams is a little bit clearer. You're starting Stafford if he's healthy. You're starting Cooper Kupp if he's healthy. You're starting Allen Robinson if he's healthy. The only questionable one that's in starter consideration is Cam Akers for me.
Mhm.
I like him a good deal better than Devin Singletary.
Mhm.
Would you feel comfortable or confident starting Cam Akers as like your RB2?
I would feel more confident in Akers than I would in Singletary.
Oh, for sure.
And obviously that's not saying much because you're not confident in Singletary in that piece. I I want to see Akers come out with a bang. I mean, I in those playoff games that we saw from Akers, we didn't see the explosiveness that was there before. Those quick cuts that we've seen from Akers before, obviously that was not all there. He definitely was rushed back onto the field. So I want him to come out and hopefully make a statement because I actually do like Cam Akers. So if he's able to come out and make a statement, I think the over under right now for the game for him for his prop bet was like 42 yards, like 42 rushing yards,
Oh,
which
wow.
I mean, if Cam Akers is going to play that game, he's getting at least at minimum 15 carries. So if he doesn't get that 42 and a half, then like that's even more concerning. So I mean, I think there's a lot riding on the game, and obviously it'll just be one week, and we never. I always say we're not going to exaggerate over a week 1 matchup. Maybe it was a dud. It was something that is not going to happen the rest of the year. I mean, we look at Sammy Watkins; he blows up every year, week 1, and then never does anything again. So I think it's a similar situation where we don't overreact, but it does give you a little bit of concern if Akers comes out and still doesn't look very good. So I would feel comfortable as Akers in that RB2 if you're forced to start him there. I would feel confident with that. There's a lot of upside, and hopefully that's exactly what you see. So
Yeah, and just how he ended the season. I
yeah,
mean, thank goodness he was able to come back onto the field. That's
yeah,
remarkable, like just in and of itself. But did not look great in those playoff
yeah,
matchups. So it is just a question, like, are we going to see the Akers who popped off, in like
yeah.
the fantasy playoffs as a rookie, or are we going to see
Mhm.
sort of the really non-effective plotter that we saw in the
Yeah,
playoffs? So that's why I brought that up. He is just he seems like a smash start, but just how he ended last year. Give me
yeah,
a little hesitation, so I
yeah,
would not. But you'd roll with him, and I think that is correct process as well. So
yep,
that's Thursday night, starting this season off, the NFL season off with an absolute banger. So I'm
yeah.
looking forward to that. So we're going to run through the Sunday early slate now, and again, the first several weeks of the year, we're going to have a full slate of games. As the year goes on, it'll be less and less as the bye weeks start coming up here. So this
Mhm.
is really just these decisions should really be like some of the easiest because you have all the options at your dispense, right?
Yep.
So we'll start it off with the Philadelphia Eagles at the Detroit Lions. Um, this is a pretty simple one for me. I'm starting all my Lions. The DeAndre Swift. You're starting him if you have him. Amon-Ra St. Brown,
Yep.
likely starting him if you have him.
Yep.
RB2 or flex play, I'm good with that. TJ Hawkinson, absolutely.
Yep.
Some guys who are a little bit questionable. We're talking like deep, maybe super flex leagues.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if I'm ready to start Jared Goff just yet. He's more of a bye week quarterback two for me.
Yep.
If you need a QB two, I'm okay with it. DJ Chark, who's a kind of a deeper wide receiver
Mhm.
option. It would have to be a very deep league in order for me to consider starting him, but definitely a good bench guy as far as I'm concerned. Now, as far as the Eagles go, I'm starting all my Eagles except
All
for
of
maybe Miles Sanders. That's the only question mark I have. Not because of his talent and then not because of what he showed last year, but just because of how he will potentially be implemented in that offense. Do you share that same level of caution that I have, or would you be more bullish on him?
Yeah, no, he's riding my bench week 1.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no shot he's getting that lineup. I will be a I will be very bold in saying this, but I think in week 1, Kenneth Gainwell will outscore Miles Sanders.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I think from a PPR perspective, I think the receptions are going to be there. It's not going to take much. And I mean, I think week 1, with how banged up Miles Sanders has been, and I hope I'm wrong because I mean, I think Miles Sanders has looked electric at times when he's on the field, and there's certain pieces that he can do, but I think in week 1, he just hasn't been practicing. He's not in line with your guys' offense over there in Philly. And so I think we're going to see Kenneth Gainwell utilized a little bit more. And I think he outscores Miles Sanders week 1. So I mean, I would feel even more confident in Kenneth Gainwell over Miles Sanders for week 1.
Gotcha. Yeah, because there was this there's a broadcaster who's local to the Philadelphia area who was interviewing Sanders,
Yeah.
just asking about like his potential role in the offense, and Sanders just had this very like down, kind of sad look on his face, just like wishing that he was implemented more in the offense. Because
Yeah.
you're an NFL player, you want the ball. If you're a wide receiver, you want to catch the ball, whatever. So he was kind of feeling like that same way. He's like, if you have me in fantasy, don't start me, because like he
Yeah.
just he that was basically like, I believe that's like the exact quote he had. So he's just a really tricky one because
Mhm.
it's not about his ability. It's just Philadelphia has just used like a pretty heavy committee approach ever since Chip Kelly came into town, and now it's
Yeah.
been Chip Kelly, it's been Doug Peterson, and now it's Nick
Nick Sirianni.
Sirianni.
Mhm.
So that's a very interesting call about Gainwell, because I do think that this game will be fairly high scoring.
Yeah.
I think to your point, it'll be a good opportunity to implement Gainwell. And but yeah, like Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, we're starting all of them. I do think Gainwell would be very interesting, like deeper flex
Yeah,
type of play. And again, like this is like a deeper league where I got playing some leagues where there's like 4 flex spots. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's not typical, but definitely you know, we are both in agreement to probably just bench Sanders in this
yeah.
case, just to see how it goes. So I like that. Saints at Falcons. The NFC South is always very good to fantasy football players. A lot of shootouts, and not always a ton of defense.
No,
As far as the Falcons are concerned, I'm not really sure if I feel confident starting anybody outside of Kyle Pitts.
I agree.
So obviously Drake London, uh, big time prospect, that their top rookie. Are you willing to throw him into a starting lineup this week, or do you kind of want to see what Mariota is able to do in that offense first?
I really want to put him on hold, at least just for week one. And I also think, like, to your point, Steve, we don't know how that offense is going to be integrated full time. It's a best case scenario, right? If you have him on your bench and there's other guys who you got, because if you drafted Drake London, you probably drafted him to be your wide receiver 3/flex. And so you probably have some depth there to kind of see, okay, let's put him on the bench. Let's get someone tenured in there, someone who actually, I mean, I would say someone like a Lazard, who would be a wide receiver 2 or 3. But, I mean, I think at this point, that first week, I'm going with some of these vet guys who are probably going to go out there and not blow up the stat line, but give you what you need week one. So you can figure out what your team looks like. Someone like an MVS, who I think, for the Chiefs week one, maybe actually goes out and does something while Sky Moore gets more integrated. And I know we'll talk more about Kansas in a little bit, and I'll give you my opinion on that. But there's a lot of guys who I would go over just for week one, because eventually he's going to start producing for you. Is it going to happen right away? We don't know. And I'd much rather ride with a veteran who's going to give me some of these points that I really, week one, I want to start off hot, right? Like, there's no better feeling than starting week 2 when you look at your matchup and you're 1-0. Like
Oh
that,
yeah,
that is the best feeling in the world. So when you start looking at that, that's what I'm looking for. So I don't feel comfortable starting Drake London. I think, to your point, the only one that I'm just set it and forget it is Kyle Pitts for me in Atlanta.
of course, yeah. Even like Cordero Patterson, still kind of iffy on if you did draft him, likely to be like a top of your bench kind of guy. I would just kind of leave him there,
Yeah.
see how the usage of that backfield plays out, which again just could generally speaking be kind of poor all season long.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
so we got to see how it plays out. Obviously, Patterson was like incredible last year, but
He was.
I'm not sure if that is really sustainable or repeatable. So he's just someone who I'm willing to wait and see on.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Saints, you got Jameis Winston, you got Alvin Kamara, you got Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. If
Yeah.
he's healthy, he's had that questionable tag for much of the summer. Where are you at with the Saints in this matchup?
It's tough, but I will say, I think, to the point that we talked earlier, I think it is going to be a high scoring game. I think it's going to be an ugly, high scoring game. And when you look at that, that is why Jameis Winston is actually one of my alphas of the week this week. Uh,
Okay, nice.
I believe that Jameis Winston goes out there and he's going to throw for over 300 and a few touchdowns out there. I think he's going to do well. And it's all eyes are going to be on Michael Thomas too, right? I mean, he hasn't played a single snap since 2020. So what Michael Thomas are we getting? What is that offense going to look like? I think they're one of the biggest mystery and question marks going into this year. Like, are they going to look good? Are they not going to look good? Like, who like, obviously Winston is manning that offense, and great. What does that look like? Does Kamara get his targets back? Because last year we saw a dip in Kamara's targets. I mean, what offense are we going to get there in New Orleans? And I think that first game is going to be a high scoring game. So I'm excited to watch it. And I mean, to your point, I feel like every time I'm watching the Falcons and the Saints, or I mean, any of those division teams going at it, it's always like a 40 bomb versus like 40-42. And I'm like, holy moly. So that's what I'm
Oh yeah.
expecting. That's why James is one of my alphas this week.
No, I love that call. For me, if you play in a super flex, he's an absolute start,
Yeah.
especially this week. But
Yeah.
in general, if you have a healthy Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, and Alvin
Yeah.
Kamara, that's a pretty
Good.
incredible core to be working with. On top of Jameis, who we know has great ability to light it up for fantasy football purposes. So I
Yeah.
love that call. I'm with you there. Moving on to the 49ers at the Bears. So a lot of very intriguing players, at least from a dynasty perspective,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
We all love Justin Fields. We're all waiting to see him play again. Trey Lance, yeah, exactly. So we got Trey Lance versus Justin Fields. Very intriguing matchup as far just against those two alone. I
Hmm.
think you can feel pretty good about starting a number of Bears. I think David Montgomery and Darnell Mooney for sure. Cole Kmet as a borderline tight end one in this matchup as well. And your
Hmm.
49ers, I think you're starting them all. And any of the ones that were worth
100%.
starting or were worth drafting. Trey Lance, Elijah Mitchell, especially Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, George Kittle.
Kittle.
Anyone of that group that you're kind of iffy on, or are you ready to just kind of fire them all up against the Bears?
I am firing him up and not looking back. Now, I think it's going to be really exciting to kind of see how it plays out there. Obviously, this is another big one for Trey Lance, and we're going to see how he's going to do. I think to your point, that Chicago Bears offense could struggle against San Francisco. I think their D line is ridiculous. They've got a good secondary. Last year they ranked fourth in yards allowed per game, so that's tough to. I mean, you figure all that is going to come into play with this, and we saw the way that O-line was protecting Justin Fields, or lack thereof
Yeah.
protection of Justin Fields in the preseason. So I think it's going to be a lot of quick slants, which is another reason Cole Kmet is one of my alphas this week, because I do believe that Justin Fields will not have enough time to get the ball out to Mooney, to get the ball out and do a lot of these plays that we saw in the preseason where he was doing that little rollout, and he did damn well doing that. But I think when you got Bosa on that line and you got a lot of these people there, I mean, it's going to be tough. And so I think there's going to be a lot of dump off passes. It's going to be a lot of that for Chicago. And I think Cole Kmet is going to rack up some nice points this week. And then on the other side of the ball, I mean, Trey Lance, that is one of my alphas this week. So
Okay. All
we're
right.
getting to my alphas right now, which is phenomenal. Trey Lance, I think he's going to show us what he's got week one. And he's got the right team to do it against. I mean, I think that Bears defense is middle of the pack at best. And so, I mean, I think there's going to be some opportunity, and he gets hopefully an Elijah Mitchell back that can help the ground game and do the ground and pound. But I think Trey Lance is about to show everyone what he's got week one. So I'm pumped and excited about that.
Yeah. Trey Lance has been a player I've been very excited for this entire offseason. Basically, just going to the end of last season when you saw Jimmy G and some of his. He's a very solid NFL quarterback, but there are some clear deficiencies, right? Trey Lance is a much more dynamic player. He's at least has shown as much in the preseason games that he's played in, but also in the regular season games. He didn't even need to do a whole lot in those matchups against the Texans, I believe, late in the season last year. He just kind of just show up and he still put out a 20-point fantasy performance. So no, I for his rushing upside for the weapons that he's throwing to, I am all about Trey Lance, especially this week against. I mean, it's never a cupcake matchup, right? But if it's pretty much as cupcake as
It's a
it
good
gets.
start.
Yeah,
It's a good
absolutely,
start for Trey
absolutely.
Lance.
Yeah, you want to go into week 2, 1-0. Same thing for Trey Lance. You want to be able to build a little bit of momentum and feel good going into the next week. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity against the Bears, despite being on the road. Not sure if that'll matter, especially with it being September. If
Yep.
we're talking November, December in Chicago, that's a whole nother story. Like
Yep.
cold, right? So moving on, Steelers at the Bengals. The big surprise Bengals return again this year against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, I think you're starting not Najee Harris. You're not hesitating to throw him in as long as he is as long as he's active. He's been dealing with that little foot issue, and Deontay Johnson. Beyond those guys, to me, just seems like a lot of borderline options. Chase
Mhm.
Claypool, maybe George Pickens, and that might be a little too soon to throw him into a starting lineup. As great as I think we all think he will be, not ready to throw him into a starting lineup just yet.
Agreed.
Pat Fryermuth, big fan of Fryermuth, but
Ooh,
if I can help it, I'm probably not ready to start him just yet. Now, there are plenty of opportunities where that would be the case. But if I'm looking at, if there's like 12 tight ends, I think I could probably name 12 tight ends I'd rather start ahead of him this week. That's basically is the point. Bengals, fire up all your Bengals as far as I'm concerned. The only one who's kind of like a borderline one is Tyler Boyd, but we're not really going to need to worry about him in the starting lineup until the bye weeks when it starts to get kind of thin. But Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, obviously, T. Higgins, fire them all up.
fire.
Anyone in this matchup that you're kind of concerned about or questionable on? Maybe like a Chase Claypool, anyone like that?
I think this will be the game where we do find out who the wide receiver 2 is, because I think, I mean, the
Hmm.
second that the Steelers had Chase Claypool announce George Pickens in the draft, it was kind of just like, damn, that's impressive, because I mean that could very well be his potential replacement. And so I think we'll find out week one. I truly believe who the wide receiver 2 is. And I mean, up until this year, I've liked Claypool as a wide receiver 2, but if Pickens comes out and out targets him, gets more yards, outproduces Claypool, I really think that's the last step that he needs to take to be that wide receiver 2. And I mean, Cincinnati last year gave up the 7th most yards, passing yards in the NFL. So you're going to see some of those same pieces that are going to be thrown. So I'll be very curious to see what happens.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's a really good question because I had like the same thought for like dynasty purposes. As
Yeah,
soon as they said George Pickens, I'm like, well, that's the end of Chase Claypool in Pittsburgh. I don't think he gets another contract there. Not that he's like a sell off all your asset, of Claypool, but I just don't. I think his time in Pittsburgh is definitely very short. So that could be an interesting narrative of like motivation,
yeah,
right? Like he has something to prove for himself, maybe for other teams. Who knows? You know what I mean? But not ready to throw him into a lineup unless it is just a tremendously deep
yep,
league. But it is a very interesting situation to monitor,
yeah,
especially with the new quarterback. We don't have Ben Roethlisberger anymore, and for what that was worth, it is Mitch Trubisky now. So hopefully that can open some things up and get some guys going more vertical. Other than just 12 yards down the field. But who am I? Who knows how far I can throw? But either way, I think for fantasy football purposes, we especially like to see what some of these guys are
yep,
able to do since
yep,
the offense can be possibly opened up a bit more. So
yep.
very excited to see that game. Now we're moving on to the Patriots at the Dolphins.
Ooh,
Of course, the Miami Dolphins revamped offense entirely, new
mhm,
head coach, a whole new group of running backs, and of course, kind of burying the lead here, Tyreek Hill is in
Tyreek,
town, and seeing if Tua is able to get the most out of these players. Obviously, it's always is a pretty stout New England defense.
mhm,
I'm just going to touch on New England first because I think there's more to say for the Dolphins for the offensive side of the ball.
yep,
New England, I think the main thing I'm looking for in this game and then just in the early part of the season is how that backfield shakes out.
mhm,
Um, you and I are both big fans of Damian Harris, but
yes,
with the emergence of Ramondre Stevenson last year,
mhm,
kind of makes me a little nervous because he looked great in the
yep,
games where he had,
yep,
ample opportunity. He was tremendous. Now, obviously, Harris had the 15 touchdown season. Not
did,
sure if that's repeatable, but he's a great player.
yeah.
He's very good. But I'm just afraid they're gonna kind of like eat into each other. Would you feel confident starting either one in like a flex spot? Or is that kind of like a wait and see situation for you?
I feel more confident starting Arham, Ramondre over
Yep.
Harris, especially in PPR formats. We've gotten a lot of reports lately that Arham is looking great. He's catching everything from that backfield. Obviously, James White retires, and what does that mean? Where are those targets going? We know last year that, I mean, when James White went down, Brandon Bolden led that backfield in targets, which is bizarre. And so Brandon Bolden is gone. James White is no longer there. You're looking at both those guys are out. So those passes, those jump offs are going somewhere. We know Damian Harris is not the guy to get those. So it's going to be going to Orham. I would feel confident putting Ramondre in a flex spot. Unfortunately for our boy Damian Harris, I think he's riding the bench on week 1 just because at this point he's just going to become a very touchdown dependent player who's going to be nothing more than a bye week filler, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I also think that the Miami defense is a little bit better than what people
Agree.
typically give them credit for. So probably not the spot that I'm willing to throw Harris at. Now, if they're going up against the Jets, that's another story. Where he could just fall into the end zone like twice in the third quarter, and you got your
And
day
call it a
made
day.
or whatever. Yeah. But no, I'm with you there. I think because of the PPR angle, I'm much more into Stevenson. But it has been interesting. Like over the summer, that their ADPs have kind of switched. That they were very close, but the Damian Harris was traditionally going like a round earlier, then it became a half round earlier, but then Stevenson kind of made that jump there in August. So I would just continue to kind of go along there. As far as the pass catchers are concerned, I am a big fan of Jacoby Myers. I am a big fan of Hunter Henry. I do think Devontae Parker and the new wide receiver there could have some interesting viability. Like halfway through the season, I'm not starting him right away. Jacoby Myers, Hunter Henry, big fans of these guys, but I'm not ready to throw them into lineups just yet. A lot of their players, including like the running backs, I see as more of like a bye week filler, like you mentioned about Damian Harris. Or if I have to, if I'm just some kind of if I'm decimated by injuries. So I think we both agree on that front. Intriguing pieces, but definitely not start worthy at this point on the whole. So let's talk about the Dolphins now. Really intriguing situation to look for. I would say early in the season. A lot of big changes there. What do you think we can expect out of Tyreek Hill? Not only just this year, or not just this week, but just for the whole season.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's a stud. He's been with Patrick Mahomes for the entirety of his career up until this point. Do you think he'll just be same old Tyreek, or do you have some doubts about that?
No, I've got some doubts about that. I think one, when you look at the teams that he's had, and so Tyreek's finishes since he joined the league in 2016 in Kansas, and these are all PPR finishes, but 2016 he ends wide receiver 19, 2017 he's number 8, 2018 he ends as number 1, 2019 he sees some injuries, he falls down to 31, 2020 he's number 2, last year he's number 6. Now, the reason I point all that out is because through all of that, the wide receiver 2 in Kansas was always just up and down. There was true nobody else there. Now, obviously, Travis Kelce, the best tight end in the league, is there, and so obviously he's getting his fair share. But I think what Kelce does so well and did so well for Hill was open up the back of the field. Because I mean, Travis Kelce is phenomenal at those quick little slants, at those quick little ins and outs. I mean, Travis Kelce has made a name for himself because of that, and I think that really benefited Tyreek Hill. Now you're seeing that. There's no one like that in Miami. I mean, that's no disrespect to Mike Gesicki, but he's no Travis Kelce. And so it's going to be a very different style of offense. And you're also seeing, I know he's praising Tua. I know Tyreek Hill is just, he's really hyping up his quarterback and he wants to hype him up. And it's nice to see, but you cannot tell me Tua is Patrick Mahomes. So when you start to look at that, I think there's a lot of that goes into play. And the last one is bold take is what I think Jalen Waddle, if healthy, outscores Tyreek Hill this year. So that he's never had someone right next to him like that. So I think there's a lot going into it. But I mean, I think with all those reasons, I think Tyreek Hill is still a very good wide receiver. Obviously, he's going to put up his big games. He's going to have a good season. I just don't know if he's going in the top 10, which is right around where he's being drafted right now. I don't see it.
Yeah, I like it more from a pure football standpoint
100%.
than from a fantasy football standpoint. And as a longtime fan of Tua's, it's been a rough road. It's been a very frustrating road. But I think what's interesting is with the new head coach, I think the offense could just be completely different than what we were used to seeing. Just a lot of conservative, a lot of running the ball, which of course you want to do to win games. You know what I mean? But it is just a very interesting turning point for Tua's career, and if he can sustain him and Waddle both, I'm way more into Waddle at cost than Tyreek Hill. Um, they have this like chemistry already that they
Yep.
were able to be tremendous last season. I mean, Waddle really, I mean he's a great player, but it kind of surprised me just how well he did.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal last year. So I think I actually don't have a lot of Tyreek Hill in redraft leagues. If I have him, I'm happy to start him. Oh, zero. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
0 shares of Tyreek Hill this year.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really can't blame you there. Just going a little too rich for what I think he's worth. As far as that goes. Not because of his ability, but just because of Tua's. From
Yep.
what we've seen from Tua and what the offense has been, it gives me a little bit of pause. Obviously, if you have him, you're starting him, but he is definitely one. I think tempered expectations is a must. Absolutely. Uh, Onto the backfield, Chase Edmonds, often drafting him as an RB2, as an RB3 flex play. I would not hesitate to go that direction with him. I'm very excited for him this season. Moving on to the Ravens at the Jets. Very interesting one with J.K. Dobbins' health. They bring in Mike Davis early in the offseason. Then they just recently bring in Kenyon
And
Drake.
Drake.
So to me, that is reading between the lines. If I have J.K. Dobbins as my RB2, I'm very much panicking. I'm looking for other directions to go.
Yep.
This is going to be a situation where it's literally going to come down to Sunday morning, where if he's active, how the rest of this week or the weekend, because we'll get a pretty extensive like injury update on like Saturday and
Yep.
Friday. I don't know. Even if he is active, I really that's going to really make me nervous. How are you feeling about Dobbins? Because I love him as a player, I love him as a
Yep.
talent. I just don't know if I can roll with him in week one, considering the additions that they brought in. Are you with
Yeah.
me there, or are you a little bit more bullish on him?
No, I'm right there with you. I actually drafted JK in a league that you and I are together in. I want to say shout out to Commissioner Breeze.
Oh,
I'm pretty
perfect.
sure it's in. Yeah, I'm pretty positive it's in Fantasy Extravaganza, but I think it's. I had this exact choice to make, and if I'm not mistaken, that's actually where I've been because I have JK in that league right now. And when I drafted him, I think he fell to I want to say it was like the 10th round. And so, I mean, he went late, and I said, you know what? If he can come back and play well, absolutely, I'll take him. And so right now, I was trying to figure out exactly where I cannot find it, and I'm going to find it so that way I can tell everybody. But it was that decision. I think the tough choice to make here is whether we go and say, okay, great. Here it is. Yeah, look at that. I actually just put in Chase Edmonds over J.K. Dobbins. And that's just how I feel right now about J.K. and the entire situation. I know he's probably going to come after me right now. J.K., I promise I love you, dude, as a player. You're phenomenal, but you cannot tell me that was not a limp.
That's right. Yeah.
And after the drill, it was a limp. And you know what? If I'm J.K. and if I'm the coaching staff in Baltimore, this is not a sprint. This is an 18-week long season, and they've got a damn good team. Why
Yep.
rush your best running back if he's not ready? Especially when it comes to games like this, where, I mean, it's the Jets. You don't need J.K. Dobbins against the Jets.
Right.
So, I mean, why rush it? Why do that? I have guys like Chase Edmonds, Ramondre Stevenson that I'm starting well above J.K. Dobbins for week one.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's such a shame because it is such a smash like opportunity there.
Yeah.
But it's a very winnable game. There's no need to roll them out. And then bring in Kenyon Drake just has like a little bit of insurance. And, it
Yep.
might just be like one of these weird like Mike Davis weeks in week one where he just does nothing. Week two, if like Dobbins can like play, so for me, just that whole offense or that backfield is just a big avoid because I would prefer Dobbins if he's 100%. I would want to see it first before I am relying on him as an RB2 or as a
Yeah.
flex personally. Rashad Bateman, I'd be very confident starting him as a flex play. Lamar Jackson, obviously. Mark Andrews, obviously. This is just areas where you don't want to get
You
cute.
set it and you
Uh,
forget it.
that's right. That's right. So those big three are going to be just concreted into your lineups for the majority of the season.
Hmm.
At least it seems that way now, right? And then now the New York Jets, kind of an interesting situation. We don't know if Zach Wilson's going to be ready for Week 1.
Hmm.
Again, just because it looks a little bit slim chances of winning this game anyway. I say no reason to rush him back from like the
Yep.
preseason injury. So Joe Flacco will likely be the starter. You got Brees Hall there. You got Michael Carter there. I think Brees Hall is a starting option. Michael Carter, not so much, not
Yep.
yet.
I agree.
Even though it could be one of these sneaky like PPR plays where he could get some catches if they are down, late. But that's just I don't want to have to rely on that in Week 1. Like
Agreed.
we're not that desperate for options. We have all the options now. Like so, these are just the things you have to think about. Maybe like halfway through the season, but not just yet. The Jets wide receivers. We're looking at Elijah Moore. I'm starting him. Garrett Wilson, kind of borderline for me. I
Yep.
think to your point, what you were saying about Drake London, like you want to rely more on the veterans in play, or it was with Sky Moore.
Sky Moore.
And MVS. I would want to just throw in Elijah Moore and not worry about having to start Garrett Wilson yet at this point, even though extremely intrigued by that.
Yeah.
Really, it's just looking like Week 1, the only startable Jets are Elijah Moore and Brees Hall.
Yeah. I agree with
Um,
that.
Jaguars and Commanders. Uh, Recently, there's the report about James Robinson potentially being active in Week 1 after the
Mhm.
late season
Mhm.
Achilles injury. Do you think that if he is active, does that shake your confidence or your love in Travis Etienne? I know
Yeah.
my answer to this. I want to hear
No.
your answer first.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. I am just so pumped that we get to watch him play some football. He was
Yes.
one of my favorite players, obviously, when he was in college. He was so electrifying. And then we see that injury. And unfortunately, obviously, it also we saw Trevor Lawrence struggle just a bit. Just a bit would be an understatement. He struggles quite a bit without him. And I think this year that I'm just excited to see the Jacksonville offense, to be honest with you. I mean, that first preseason game when they had Etienne and Trevor Lawrence was out in the field and they had most of their starters. I want to say they had everybody out there. And I think it was against your Eagles. They looked pretty good. And they look good doing it. So I think I'm excited to kind of see what that looks like. And this whole time, I've been trying to pull up what the receiving prop bet was for Travis Etienne, because when I last checked, it was 16 and a half yards.
Oh, come on.
And I was just like, he's going to get that in one reception. Like, are you kidding me?
That's the first drive, Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. So I can't find it right now. It's not showing up on FanDuel. But if I'm a Jacksonville fan, I'm thrilled to see what this offense looks like because you've got Trevor Lawrence in year 2. You have a healthy running back now. They went out and got Evan Ingram. I think next year they'll load up on wide receiver, but they have what should be an interesting offense. So with Doug Peterson behind the helm, I'm excited to see what they look like. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely more of a long game excitement for the Jaguars as an organization, but James Robinson being active just does not do anything for me. I
yeah,
mean, just because you're active doesn't mean you're going to play
yeah,
significant snaps. I think it would be very foolish to throw again, like it's like the JK dot, like you don't need him in the game in this particular moment. Why further? And
yeah,
again, James Robinson for who he is, tremendous player, awesome story,
yeah,
and I think we all were just collectively very upset, when he got hurt last year.
yeah,
But ETN, again, he's a pass catcher, he's a phenomenal athlete. I'm really excited. And again, the Jags are just going to be coming are going to be playing from behind quite often. I
yep,
think Trevor Lawrence once again will be in the top half of the league in pass attempts to help Travis Etienne. Like he just may not come off the. I mean, he's going to have to come off the field eventually, but he could just be one of these absolute smash players that has like, I don't know. I don't want to get too crazy with it because I'm really excited for him too. But
Absolutely.
I think because of the pass catching upside, I mean, I really wouldn't be that shocked if he finishes as a top end RB2, RB
Yeah.
like back end RB1. I think that is in his range of outcomes
Yep.
if he can catch as many passes as I think he is capable of with
Yep.
the volume that'll be coming out of that passing game.
Yep.
So some other guys in that offense, tight end Evan Ingram. Unless you're in a tight end premium or you're starting two tight ends, I'm not sure if you're going to be starting him yet. Kind of keep him on the radar. Fine to have on your bench, but just not ready to throw him in the starting lineup yet. Christian Kirk, who should be their wide receiver one option.
Yeah. He is.
Um, Happy with him as a flex option. I have kind of warmed up to him as the offseason has gone. I think for dynasty purposes, I'm not as into him, but for single season,
Mhm.
I'm a little bit more into him. So as a flex option, absolutely. Marvin Jones Jr. for me is just a nice veteran to have like on your bench, or
Right.
he might not even be rostered at this point in a lot of leagues. Definitely got to keep like on your radar there. Um, Commanders side, this is one of my favorite plays of the week, actually, which is just kind of like a sneaky one that's come on like all of a sudden because of the unfortunate situation surrounding Brian Robinson.
Mhm.
But Antonio Gibson could be an absolute smash spot this
Good.
week.
Very well could.
Very well could, and it's a it feels bold to say only because all of the offseason reports have been so bad. But now
Mhm.
it's kind of becoming this thing of like, well, there's Antonio Gibson, there's JD McKissick, who's a good like pass catching option.
Mhm.
Probably might not need to be utilized as much in this particular matchup. So I don't know. Like, would you feel comfortable with Antonio Gibson as a flex play or as an RB2? For me, I absolutely would, at least until unfortunately, Brian Robinson is out.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with you. I think the the potential for an RB1 season, we somewhat saw that is within reach from Gibson. Now, there's clearly a lot of pieces that Ron Rivera does not like about his game because Brian Robinson was jumping Gibson on the depth chart, and I think part of that
Yeah.
is that pass blocking, and I mean it's a very unfortunate event that obviously happened with Brian Robinson. For Antonio Gibson, it's a huge opportunity. And so I think if he can kind of shape up, he can prove that he could be that starting running back. And I think, I mean, to your point, it starts with week one. He's got to be able to pass block because, I mean, the Jacksonville defense is going to get after Commander Wentz. Like they will be after him. And so I think he's got to be able to block. He's got to be able to showcase that. And it's a good start to say, like, yo, Ron, I deserve this job and he could come out and start very hot. And so I think he is a very sneaky play. Let me ask you one thing. I got asked about it was about 3 hours ago. Someone said, "Do I start in a full PPR? Do I start Antonio Gibson or Travis Etienne? Who do
Hmm.
you go with?" I'll give you my answer as to what I said, but who would you go with?
I think this is one of these situations where I'm drafting ETN, is a couple rounds earlier
Yep.
than Antonio Gibson.
Yep.
So for all the reasons that we just kind of touched on, I'm gonna stick with ETN in this case because it just seems like more of a sure thing
Yep.
because of the opportunity and his skill set.
Yep.
Really, if there were no reports as negative as they were surrounding Antonio Gibson, well,
Mhm.
I mean, I would say Gibson, but he just has been such a tremendous like faller in value because
Yeah.
of this really just kind of a strange offseason for him. Because all that really held him back last year was like the shin injury. But outside of
Mhm.
that, I mean, productive as anything as a rookie.
Yeah.
But if ETN is what we think he is, I mean,
Mhm.
he should definitely be well higher than Antonio Gibson's
I agree.
ceiling. So I would kind of stick to the course and just and ride it out with ETN there again, just because of the pass catching upside. Because he's like the pass catcher in that backfield, I think
Mhm.
Gibson obviously can be utilized that way. But if like say the Commanders are down big, well that's gonna be that's going to be when Gibson's coming off and JD McKissick is going in. So I
Yep.
think that gives ETN like the little bit of an edge there for
Yep.
sure.
I agree. I agree.
But it is a question that, a lot of people are going to be asking themselves,
Yeah.
like, oh, with this like increased opportunity, like what exactly does that mean? Because
Mhm.
people will be facing that exact question, like
Yep.
you were just asked, earlier today. So
Yep.
that's a perfect example of blending that, taking new information and either pivoting or just staying the course regardless. But at that point, it is just a wealth of good options, and
Yep.
that's just what it comes down to. It's like, and it may be the only difference of like 1 point, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
still, the
Yeah.
point is like you want to make sure that you are setting your lineups and using the best process possible. So we can
Mhm.
always kind
I
of fall
agree.
back on what are those edges. And in this case, the edge for ETM would be the pass catching upside that Gibson may be limited by because of the backup in that offense. But
Yep.
uh, great question. I love that. So you mentioned about about Commander Wentz. Uh, Definitely a super flex starting option in a one quarterback league. No, not starting them this week. Really just like a bye week filler or like an injury filler outside
Mhm.
of super flex leagues. For sure. The pass catchers there, Terry McLaurin, you have him. You're starting him.
Mhm.
Jahan Dotson, I'm very excited about him. Not quite ready to throw him into the starting lineup just for a lot of the same reasons that you brought up earlier.
Yep.
Talk about the difference between like leaning on veterans and not rookies, at least for week one. Like George
Yeah.
Pickens and Chase Claypool, all that, the same discussion. I do think, though, that Dotson has tremendous opportunity because outside of McLaurin, like Logan Thomas isn't
Oh,
100% yet. He may not even suit up. So I think Dotson is next in line. Again, you can debate the quality of the targets coming from Carson Wentz all you want, but still that volume is volume.
yep.
So I think
Yep.
if Jahan Dotson is not rostered in your league, I really do think he could be like the hot, pickup for week two,
Yeah.
unless you know about him, unless you're a fan of him, then you already know what's coming potentially. But I really do think in like the more casual leagues, he will be like a big time pickup going into either week two or just in the first month. I think
Yep.
he'll be a
I agree.
player. People say, "Oh, I wish I would have gotten him,"
Yep.
when before everyone, whatever. So he's definitely that kind of guy for me. But really, Gibson and McLaurin are basically the only commanders that I
I
would
agree.
feel confident starting at least in week one. Until we can see more stuff.
Yep.
Next matchup is one of the more intriguing matchups of the week, as far as I'm concerned. We have the Browns at the Carolina Panthers. So we have Baker Mayfield with his new team playing against his old team in the new house there. So it's not only very intriguing as far as that like revenge game narrative is concerned, as the Browns just completely shoved him off to the side, brought in Deshaun Watson, as potentially
Yep.
controversial as that is or was. Um, Now he has a chance to really show them like potentially like the mistake that they made in
Yeah.
in doing that, so there's a lot of that going on. We're gonna see Christian McCaffrey again, a lot of exciting pieces there. As far as fantasy is concerned, I'm not going to be starting Baker Mayfield outside of
Yeah.
superflex leagues. Christian McCaffrey, absolutely. DJ Moore, absolutely. Beyond DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey, are there any Panthers that you're interested in starting this week?
No, no, not in the least bit. I am very curious to know, and still not rosterable just yet, but I'm very curious how Tommy Tremble progresses this year. And I think, I mean, to your point, there's not many pass catchers behind DJ Moore and CMC that I want there. So Tommy Tremble has a chance to kind of make his name up there. So I'm excited to see what they do and how they do it. But no, I mean, week one, it's just CMC and DJ Moore.
Yeah, I mean, it's just bad process to kind of throw in a guy like Robbie Anderson, and you're just hoping for like a big
Yeah.
touchdown catch. I mean, he's even kind of borderline rosterable in like your standard leagues
Yeah.
anyway, like your typical 10, 12 team leagues. He may just be like one of the waiver options there for
Yeah.
you. And Terrence Marshall Jr., post type sleeper, nowhere near ready to be thrown into a starting lineup just yet. So we can just
Rant.
just see how that goes. Now, the Cleveland Browns are an interesting one here.
Mhm.
Obviously, Deshaun Watson has been suspended for the first 11 games. So we have Jacoby Brissett. Again, even in a super flex league, he's a borderline start. He's more of a QB3 as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with
But
that.
you have a new wide receiver in Amari Cooper. I think at best he's like a back end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 option. So I could roll with him as a flex option. Wouldn't feel great about it, but it's something that I think I could justify. I think more from like a volume standpoint. Like
Yeah,
it's kind of a lower volume standpoint coming from like Jacoby Brissett, but still I think he will command 10 targets a game, which is what I'd like to see out of a wide receiver 3. I think that's phenomenal. So I think he's being a little bit slept on, to be honest. But just so much turmoil surrounding that whole
there
team.
is.
It's like no one really wants to touch any of the pieces there. But I do like Amari Cooper still. Nick Chubb, if you have him, I'm starting him. How about Kareem Hunt? Do you think there's any upside for him as a flex play this week or
Yeah,
early in the season?
I think Kareem Hunt has the potential to give you that consistency piece that you're looking for that we kind of mentioned earlier, where he's going to give you your 4 receptions, 5 receptions, 30, 40 yards, maybe run it for another 30, 40, may get a touchdown in there for you, and he steals it from Chubb. But I mean, I think Kareem Hunt is definitely one of the guys that I would start. Now, another question I got, which I thought was a very fair question, was Ramondre Stevenson against Miami or Kareem Hunt um,
Hmm.
versus the Panthers. And so the way that I looked at it was they're both going to be utilized in the pass game. They both are going to hone the receptions that you're looking for. They both have another power back. They're very similar situations. However, Hunt has just he's got the proven hands. He's done it year over year. And I think, I mean, with that, I went with Hunt over Arham just based on what we know from Hunt. But I mean, I think they both have solid years. But it was another good question I've been getting a lot of. And Hunt is definitely one of those players that people are just not sure where to put him. Is he the flex? Is he the RB2? Where exactly is he going? But I mean, I would feel confident starting Hunt this week. I think Jacoby Brissett is going to lean a lot on him. I will say the guy who I am biggest on in that entire Cleveland Browns offense is none other than like David Njoku, because that's really who I think benefits from having Jacoby at quarterback. Jacoby loves his tight ends, loves the tight ends, loves the quick dump off.
Yep.
Jacoby is going to make a lot of David Njoku shares very happy, and myself included, because I have David Njoku as my tight end 2 in Scott Fishbowl. So
Me too. Me
yeah,
too.
yes.
Perfect.
And so he's going to make us very happy. And so I'm excited to kind of see what they do. But those are the only guys I'm starting there. It's Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, David Njoku, and Amari Cooper if I have nothing, like really nobody else to play. So
Yeah,
yes.
it's one of those you kind of want to like hold your nose and like click submit,
Yep.
but I just happen to be a really big fan of his game. Obviously a lot of the potential came out with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys and everything else. But yeah, I think the route tree that he can run is a little bit more beneficial for someone like Brissett, who's going to be doing more like underneath stuff. Like I was really into Donovan Peoples-Jones as a late round flyer, and David Bell like the next guy up kind of a thing. But I really don't like their season long
I agree.
um viability with someone like Brissett. This all
Yeah.
changes once Watson is back and he's still able to play and everything else. But I think you nailed it. Anyone who's downfield, I think, is going to take a step back in that offense.
Yeah.
Anyone who's more um, the more intermediate kind of route running, Njoku, Hunt, Cooper, I think will absolutely benefit. But with Cooper, it is a tough decision because he's sort of is in this range of like a zillion wide receivers who
Yeah.
could very easily
Yeah.
have a better output than him. So I'd be willing to take the chance, but I probably wouldn't like locking in that lineup for sure. So now we'll move on to the Colts at the Texans. Absolute smash spot for Jonathan Taylor.
I'm excited.
Um, my Michael Pittman, Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan is definitely a good QB2 play this
Yep.
week. even borderline, if you really completely punted uh, quarterback in your draft, I think he'd be fine to just throw in, but definitely more useful as a QB2 this week.
Yep.
Outside of the obvious in Pittman and Taylor. And then on the Texans side, I think Brandon Cooks. And I think outside of him, I'm not sure if there's anyone who's like a surefire starter, except for maybe one. Where do you fall
Hmm.
with Damian Pierce? Is he someone that you'd be willing to start this week with, just as the hype has gotten completely erupted, right?
Yeah.
Is he a starter for you in week one without knowing, what that offense is really going to be made of, and with a pretty stout Colts defense?
Yeah.
Where are you at with Pierce there?
Unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
I want to leave Pierce on the bench just to kind of see what that week one looks like. Now another league that I'm in another league where I drafted JK very late. JK is not the guy I want starting for the reasons that we just talked about. So I just subbed in Pierce for him because I had no
Perfect.
other
Yeah.
choice. I mean, like it
Yeah.
was something we talked about. I think like my other two options were Khalil Herbert and Kenneth Gainwell, which I mean, but if I'm picking between those two guys and Pierce, I'm taking Pierce.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious to see what that first week looks like.
Yeah, I think with Pierce, what you're getting is volume, which is always great. The quality of the volume is really up for question. Kind of a touchdown dependent
Yeah, big time.
sort of a play for me, because as far as the pass catching goes, I think that can be will be dumped off to like Rex Burkhead, who's still on the active roster. Obviously, Marlon Mack was with the team. He got cut. He was on the practice squad. He just got cut from the practice squad today. So I think it'll go Pierce, and then Burkhead will be the pass catcher there.
Yep, I
So it's
agree.
kind of like, I'm if you're starting Pierce, you're hoping that he falls into the end zone in the first half. Otherwise, it might not be pretty.
Otherwise,
Um,
you're sweating because you may
yeah.
for that first game against that tough defense, you may just get a 21-50 stat line, and you're going to
Yep.
be very upset because you wanted that top production that might not come week one. Don't get me wrong, I like Damian Pierce, and I think throughout the year he'll be a solid RB3, RB2 upside. But I mean, week one against a tough defense, I'm not sure I'm hitting full send on that just yet.
Absolutely, absolutely. Then on the other side of that, if they are down big in this game, I think someone like Brandon Cooks is definitely a solid option
Mhm.
to be a starter. I think Nico Collins is definitely an intriguing piece, but not someone I'm ready to start just yet. But definitely has breakout potential, so definitely
Mhm.
like that. So that does it for the Sunday early slates. The Sunday later slate. Only a few games there, then Sunday night football, then Monday night football. So the later slate on Sunday, we have Giants at Titans. Outside of the obvious, which in this case would be Saquon Barkley, who I
Mhm.
would still be very confident starting, and Derrick Henry, who I think is going to just absolutely smash in this game. He should be, full health and full
Yep.
steam. Very intrigued though by the Giants' offense with Brian Dable coming in.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
am curious to see what that looks like. Although at times Daniel Jones, it has been kind of a train wreck at times, but then again that there is a lot of potential that is unrealized there. And sometimes we have seen it. So that just gives me a little bit of pause with guys like Kenny Galladay.
Yep.
Um,
Not
you
touching
know,
Kenny Galladay.
yeah, I mean, even like on the back end of your bench, even that's just kind of like,
Mhm.
it's not,
Yeah.
it still doesn't look pretty, but it is just like one of these things. Like he has finished as an RB1 or as a wide receiver one in the past in Detroit, with Matthew Stafford, of course. That's a massive difference between him and
Big
Daniel
time.
Jones. So I think outside of Barkley, outside of Henry, kind of questionable stuff though, right? So
Mhm.
I like Robert Woods as a player, but he is coming off the injury.
Yep.
Has been just has kind of held that questionable tag all spring and summer long. Not sure what's going to be happening with Treylon Burks, another intriguing prospect for sure.
Yeah.
Week one, I would be more confident starting Robert Woods, just because it just seems like the coaching staff is just not thrilled with like Burks's spring and summer, which
Mhm.
I don't know. I thought it was a tremendous fit for Burks there, but I really just think it's gonna be the Derrick Henry show at least in week one. But
I
definitely
agree with that.
something to keep your eyes on. You have any differing thoughts on the skill position players for Tennessee?
No, I think it's going to be a wait and see game there. I think, I mean, to your point, other than Barkley, there's not much fantasy at stakes that I have on this game from the Giants' perspective. And then from the Titans, um, Derrick Henry's another one who I got 0 shares of this season.
Okay.
So not looking at any Titans relatively for fantasy, but I think it'll be our first NFL game speed where I mean we see Treylon Burks have a full game and see how he does. I don't want him to. I mean I don't expect him to blow out the stat line and do anything crazy, but I'd love to see a 3, 4, 5 catch game from him to kind of just not only boost his confidence but show that he's got that that he's got it, and they got why they drafted him. They replaced AJ Brown for him, so they saw something. And I mean, we've seen it as well. He's a very talented guy. He's a monster. So like, I would just love to see that translate over. But from a fantasy perspective, week one, no.
Yep. Not just yet. Yeah. So I'm a
Yeah.
little bit more bullish on Derrick Henry than you. I just think he's one of the few like pure bell cow volume plays that you'll see.
Mhm.
So if he can hold up and sustain that workload, I think he'll still be solid, even though I think the whole Titans offense in general does take a step back without AJ Brown in the fold
Yep.
anymore there. But very excited for Henry as long as he can, of course, stay on the field. Pretty remarkable, though, that he finished as an RB2, only playing in 8 or 9 games last year. It's crazy. But so he's is kind of a different breed.
He is.
Moving on, Packers at Vikings. This is a pretty interesting one, actually. I think for the Vikings, it's a little bit more obvious what you're doing. I think Cousins is a
Mhm.
borderline QB1 play. Justin Jefferson, obviously, Dalvin Cook, obviously, if they're healthy, you're playing them. Adam Thielen, for me, he's definitely a wide receiver 3 flex type of a play. Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, clear cut starters for sure. AJ Dillon, I think, has some flex appeal, has some,
Yep.
I mean, maybe even RB2 appeal. If you really focused on wide receivers on the early end and you
Mhm.
you got AJ Dillon as your RB2, I think he's definitely someone that I'm starting to warm up a bit on. I do think the Packers have a phenomenal defense. So I think like in his cost, you are projecting an uptick in his workload. So I
Yeah.
think that is the thing that is definitely something that is wise to anticipate. I
Sure.
just I my only hesitation with him though is I'm just so much of an Aaron Jones fan, like, and he can really catch the ball extremely well. I mean, there's multiple games where he had more than like 8 targets. It was just phenomenal. Now AJ Dillon is no slouch there either. He definitely is able to catch the ball, and he's gotten a few games with like 5 or 6 targets, I believe, just not as often as Aaron Jones. But if you bake that into his output this season, so you'd be very confident starting him as an RB2 or just more of as a flex play.
No, I feel very confident with Dylan as an RB2. I think with what we saw, and I mean, I know you're big on Aaron Jones, and I mean rightfully so. I'm big on Aaron Jones this year too. I mean, I think he's going to have a monster year, and he could be the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay, which is now more likely than ever. With a hurt Alan Lazard and Christian Watson. I don't know if he's practiced a day or not. I'm not sure what's going on there, but
Right.
I mean, AJ Dillon outcarried Aaron Jones in the end zone. I mean, whether it was from the 20, from the 10, from the 5, he outcarried him
Oh,
the
there you go.
entire
Okay.
season last year. So when you look at some of those pieces, they really relied on that. And the last thing that I'll also say is Aaron Rodgers has been top 5 in throwing in the end zone from the 20, from the 10, and the 5. His number 1 target is gone. Devante Adams was top 3 over the last 3 years in red zone targets over the last 3 years. So when you look at everything that they've done so far in the past, it's always been around A-Rod and Devontae. Now, if no one replaces Devante, and if Alan Lazard isn't that guy, or Christian Watson isn't able to produce right away, Romeo Dubs, who knows what happens. But I think that they will lean more on Dillon and Jones in the end zone than we think. And so that's why I've been preaching all offseason. I think there's a high chance that AJ Dillon could lead the league in rushing touchdowns. So
Oh,
uh,
okay.
that's a big one. I know it's bold, but that's one of my bold statements because I think we'll see a different offense there in Green Bay.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. My confidence in Aaron Rodgers has not been shaken. I mean, he not having Devante Adams is you can't say it's not a downgrade because it is, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but I'm confident enough in him. I'm not sure about if there's a pass catcher I'm confident starting though, if that
yep,
makes
I
sense.
agree. Yep.
So we're very intrigued to see what happens. We're very excited to see Watson and what Dubs can do. Um, I do think though that if Alan Lazard is active, he should
Mhm.
be the leading wide receiver in
I agree.
targets. Um, but then again, with this like late injury situation, he was kind of borderline flex play for me. All of a sudden, just on the bench to just see what happens there and just kind of monitor that. But yeah, so those NFC North games are always exciting. So definitely have an eye on that. Moving on, the Chiefs at the Cardinals. Okay, so an interesting one because but both these teams have new um, wide receiver ones at least for the first several weeks of the season. So Marquis
Mhm.
Brown comes into Arizona. DeAndre Hopkins is suspended, so I think Marquis Brown's early season potential is going to be skyrocketed, and I don't think it's going to plummet necessarily. But I think like if you can catch some fire with him like early on in the season, and then
Mhm.
potentially like sell high, I think that would be the right move
Yeah,
to go with. And then Juju, and then now in Kansas City, all the potential in the world there.
yep.
I think Patrick Mahomes is not going to slow down just because Tyreek Hill is out of town.
Yeah.
Initially, I was kind of thinking that might be the case, but I think the addition of Sky Moore along with Juju Smith-Schuster
Mhm.
and Marcus Valdes-Scantling is just going to keep Mahomes as a
Yep.
pretty clear top five option. So I personally would be confident starting Mahomes and Juju, not so much on MVS. He just seems to be more of like
I
a
agree.
peaks and valleys kind of a player, maybe in like a GPP on like DraftKings or something. Sky Moore, I want to wait and see. I think you nailed that in the first half of the show here. How about the backfield? I do
I'm not
not know
touching it.
what to do with Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I'm not touching it.
Yeah.
I at the beginning of the season, I really thought maybe CEH was going to have a bounce back year, and then you start seeing the reports about how big Reed is on Pacheco, and then Pacheco has a good off season, or I'm sorry, a good training camp. They
Yep.
keep him on the roster. There's a lot of moving pieces, and now it just feels like there's no true commitment there, and it could be really nasty. So I'm not getting burned by that. No, thank you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, and then all the while, like Ronald Jones is still there, just
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
fantasy football hipsters like darling, now just a complete like afterthought. So it's just really interesting. Like this backfield could really go a number of different ways.
anyway.
But I think just still like the tried and true pieces there are Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey, who I didn't mention yet. And then with the emergence of Juju Smith-Schuster, those are the big
Mhm,
three that I think are just like the must starts. Um, on the Cardinals side, Kyler
mhm,
Murray. You got Marquise Brown, who we already talked about him a bit. I do think, though, that once DeAndre Hopkins is back from his suspension, he will just be back to his old self as like the
mhm.
leading target leader. Zach Ertz is a new tight end in town. Another one of these tricky, like all of a sudden like injury kind of situations. So all of a sudden you're looking at like kind of a later round volume play at tight end just not being there. So
Yep.
that could benefit Marquis Brown more, or Rondale Moore a little bit more, maybe even AJ Green. I don't know. I'm willing to think probably not. Although one of my favorite Cardinals this year is James Conner, the starting running back there.
Mm-hmm.
Although
Mm-hmm.
there were good things to be said about Eno Benjamin, things like this.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone outside of Kyler, Marquise, or James Conner that you'd feel confident starting? Like, are
No,
you?
no, I'm
Gotcha.
sticking with them.
Yeah.
Now, I will say Marquise and Connor are both on my alphas for the week this week.
Oh,
Uh,
perfect. Okay.
so I do think, to your point, we are going to see a shootout in Kansas City. Or I'm sorry, is the game in Kansas or in Arizona?
That one is in Arizona.
So we're going to see a shootout in Arizona.
There you go.
And so I think that is the main reason I have Marquise as one of the alphas of the week. And same thing with Connor. I think they're going to be scoring a ton. And I mean, James Conner last year was just a touchdown machine. So I think we see something similar week one. And likewise on the other side of the ball, Mahomes is not going to ease up either. So it could be another one of those Atlanta Saints, just high scoring 30, 40-point games.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Moving on to the Raiders at the Chargers, we touched on this one a little bit earlier, but a lot of really intriguing pieces in both of these offenses. We'll start with the Raiders side of the ball. Derek Carr is kind of like a borderline starting option for me. Superflex, obvious starter. He's just kind of like QB 13, QB 12. I'm not sure if you like him a little bit better than that or not at this point, but I think if you have him, you could feel very confident starting him with Devante Adams, with Hunter Renfrow, with Darren Waller. Hopefully he is healthy and it wasn't just a contract new agent kind of a
Yeah.
situation there. I don't want to like dust off like
Speculate.
injuries. I mean, he very well could have been hurt, but it's just one of these things that happens. It is like the business side of things. You know what I mean?
100%.
But it's a phenomenal set of weapons to be throwing to. So I'm very confident starting all four of them. One player I'm a little iffy on these days is Josh Jacobs, someone who for me I started out very bullish on, then kind of got a little iffy on. Although Kenyon Drake is not in town anymore, so that kind of bumps him up just a hair. New head coach with Josh McDaniels. So where was he before? He was in New England.
Yep.
Had like the orchestrator of one of the most horrifying committee approaches in an offense. Like obviously it works well for actual football, but for fantasy football, we don't like that. Obviously,
Yeah.
where are you at with Josh Jacobs at this point? You think you could throw him as an RB2 or a flex, or
I
kind of wait
think
and see?
before Kenyon Drake was released, I
Yeah,
was completely out. With that release, I think there's a glimmer of hope that
yeah,
he's able to do. I don't need him to do RB1 numbers. Shit. I don't even do RB2 numbers. Just give me some of that flex running back 3 numbers and play in there. And I think I mean, once that news of Drake being released came out, I think I drafted him in 2 or 3 redrafts. So, I mean, I'm in if the matchup is right, the stars align, and Bill Belichick just like gives me the go ahead because I know that eventually he's probably just talking McDaniels every single day, anyways. So
yeah.
I've got to get the okay from Belichick to start him. But I think this is one of those matchups where I would start Josh Jacobs this week. I think another high scoring game. There's going to be players that are scoring the ball. I think to your point, I'm starting Derek Carr very comfortably. Another thing I tweeted out earlier was like I think Derek Carr leads the league in passing yards this year
Okay,
because
yeah.
I mean last year he got very close to 5,000, career best for him, and then you add his college buddy and one of the best wide receivers in the NFL right now. It's a no brainer that he's in the conversation to lead the league in passing yards.
I like it. I like that. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. To your point about Tyreek Hill earlier, I think Devante Adams for me is a player that I think is an obvious stud, right? I just don't know if he's gonna have the same target share that he had in Green Bay. Last year, he was at an astounding 31% target share.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. I think he will still be great. I think he'll still be a wide receiver one. Just tempered expectations there. The Raiders and Derek Carr just kind of have like kind of very annoyingly are known to just spread the ball out a lot.
Yep.
Now that
Yep.
may all change now because it is like a new offense or it's a new head coach and stuff. But I just don't think that Adams is going to get the Rodgers treatment.
Yep, I agree.
I think it's possible because they already have like a lot of history together and stuff. But I
Mhm,
think with Renfro, with Waller, I just don't see it yet. I just don't know if a 30% target share is really in the books there. But so just as another stud who I think gonna have to simmer down on some of the expectations he would be, but my choice for that.
mhm.
Now looking on the Chargers side, like our Chargers, everyone loves the Chargers, right? You
Yes,
got
yes,
Justin
they do.
Herbert, you got Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. We're starting all four of those guys. Is there
Yeah.
anyone else on this team that you'd be interested in starting this week or beyond? Or was that
A
is that
sneaky a sneaky play is actually gonna be Josh Palmer. I
okay?
think, I mean, in deeper leagues, if you're looking at some of those pieces, I mean, we talked about it earlier. I would even go as bold to say, like, between Cooper and Palmer, like, I'm thinking about that matchup. I'm starting Cooper because as I just mentioned, like, you go with the proven vets, but Josh Palmer is a very sneaky play. If you've got him, I mean, training camp reports are he's looked amazing. He has done really well. The Chargers last year ran a lot of three receiver sets. Josh Palmer is their wide receiver 3 now. I think he's a sneaky play. I mean, do I start him right away? No. But if I have to, if there's, if you're in one of those conundrums where it's a deeper league and you got J.K. Dobbins out and you need someone else in that flex, or you're hesitant to start someone. I mean, I think Josh Palmer's a sneaky one. So he's a dart throw, but could be something.
I like that. Okay. No, I agree. Yeah. It's just an offense where any piece of that offense is one that's very intriguing to me. And it all begins and ends with Justin Herbert, of course. So he just kind of rises like all the boats there. But yeah, no. So I think especially as the season progresses, when bye weeks start getting thick and injuries
Yep.
start piling up, like the third wide receiver in that offense could be better than like the wide receiver 2, like on the Jets, for
Yeah.
example. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
So I really do think that's a tremendous point. And a guy who probably might be available in a bunch of leagues. So he
Yeah.
could be another one that could be like the hot pickup of the week. But again,
Yep.
I mean, you already know just from playing dynasty and stuff, like he's not
Hmm.
available like in most like deep
Right.
like
Right.
leagues there. But for redraft purposes, definitely an interesting breakout candidate for sure. But again, one of the more notable matchups, just kind of uh as the rematch of the end of the season last year.
Yep.
It's hard to top that game. Like that was like just one of the all-time games that I think I've ever seen.
Yep.
So just a very intriguing one to watch. I got that one starred along with the Monday Night Football matchup, which we'll get to in just a second. But Sunday Night Football, we have your Dallas Cowboys against the Tampa Bay
Yes, we do.
Buccaneers.
We do.
Um, Tom Brady, you're starting. Dak
Yep.
Prescott, you're starting.
Yep.
Um, Leonard Fournette, you're starting. Mike
Yep.
Evans, you're starting.
Yep.
Some of the questionable ones that I have in Tampa Bay are Chris Godwin, only because of his health, right?
Yep.
If it's 100% healthy, you are not hesitating there. Where are you at with Godwin? Have you been keeping up with his health and things like that? Because I
Yeah.
saw he shed his knee brace and stuff. Would you feel comfortable starting him if he's set to be active week 1?
No.
Yeah.
I I think they're too smart over in Tampa to do anything but rush him into the offense. And you know what? From everything that we've read, it's going to be he's going to be 100% very soon. Very, very soon. I mean, to your point, yes, like some of the breaking news today was that he like shed the knee brace. He looks great. Some of the training camps report that we've heard has been that he has looked great. He's ahead of schedule. But at the end of the day, Russell Gage is also going to be active. They've came out and said Russell Gage is good to go. They've got Mike Evans. Lenny is in there. Rashad White, another guy who's going to get some passes thrown his way. That's there. Oh, and guess what? Julio Jones is there too. Come
Some
on.
guy named Julio Jones,
Yeah,
right?
and
Yeah.
then some guy named Julio, like they're not going to rush that. And even if he is active, I see a world where he's probably limited to his snaps. He's probably playing 30% of the snaps,
Yep.
35%, slowly easing him into it because he hasn't had those practice reps, those training camp reps. So I'm not starting Chris Godwin week 1.
Yeah, I kind of have like October in mind. It's like we'll see how
Absolutely.
September goes. I just when you're trying to figure out what's risky and what is
Mhm.
more like a true thing, right?
Yep.
Godwin, amazing talent, tremendous upside when he's 100%. There's not a chance that I'm going to be willing to take the risk on him, at least in week one and possibly even week two. Now, my tone could be completely shifted if he plays, like you said, if he's only like around 30% of the snaps, which I even think would probably be generous, to be honest.
I agree.
If he's at like 60%, just kind of easing him in, but still a pretty good amount. And then a week two, it's like 70, 75. My tune will change very quickly. But
Yeah.
at this point, he's someone who I have zero uh, single season shares of, like, because that he's just more of a guy that I'm looking to get through trading,
Yeah.
if it makes sense to.
Yeah.
And again, like in October, I think we'll have a very good idea at that point, but I don't need to take on that risk on the early part of the season. But at this point, he is being drafted as like a wide receiver four. So if you're
Yeah.
getting him there, you have that insurance to wait on him. So a very intriguing one. But yeah, I just think it's gonna be like the Mike Evans show for the early part of the season
I
for
agree.
sure. Um, but like Gage and Julio, obviously very good players, when they're given opportunities to, but not ones that I'm ready to roll out to start, at least at this
Yeah.
point. Now, on the Cowboys side of the ball, right? CD Lamb, Dak Prescott, these are obvious starts as far as I'm concerned. I think
Yep.
Ezekiel Elliott is also a start in this week. Where are you at on Zeke and the Tony Pollard dynamic? I think Tony Pollard could have tremendous pass catching upside. Are you
Yeah.
still pretty bullish on Zeke as a Cowboys fan or just like a fantasy football player in general?
I
Where are you at
I
with him?
I like where he's at for his ADP.
Okay.
And so I think like at cost, at ADP, I think Zeke is a fine option. Obviously, even last year he was hurt. We saw a lot of missing pieces from that offense, and yet he still was able to produce, which is just bizarre. He was hurt. He still does well. Now I think this year at ADP, I think he performs well. I do think that Tony Pollard is going to be the X factor on that offense. With Gallup still recovering from his surgery and kind of seeing where he's at, there was mixed reviews about Tolbert. Some, one day it was he's lighting up training camp, he looks amazing. The second one was like, oh, he's not catching up with the starters, he's dropping a lot of passes, whatever the case is. There's been mixed reports on Tolbert, so I'd be very curious. James Washington went out with an injury as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's looking like they're going to have to revert. And I mean, especially now, I mean, they signed Jason Peters, which is great. I think it's a very underrated signing that no one's talking about, but they
Yeah.
got Jason Peters. That's going to help out our line with losing Tyron Smith. So they're going to rely heavily on those two running backs. And I think Tony Pollard proved last season he can almost be that Austin Eckler type role for the Cowboys. So I'd be very curious, but I think Tony Pollard he's another flex start. I feel comfortable starting Tony Pollard in the flex, especially against Tampa. It's going to be a high scoring game. So I think Tony
Yeah.
Pollard is a solid flex play. But those are the only guys. I mean, aside obviously from to your point, not Jarwin. Whoa, Schultz.
Schultz, sure.
Yeah, from you've got Schultz, Lamb, Dak, Zeke, and Pollard, which is crazy. But I mean, those five guys I feel comfortable starting against Tampa. It's going to be a high scoring game. Very similar to what we were talking about earlier. They're going to have to keep scoring to catch up. So,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah.
Perfect. Okay. And then to finish off the week one slate, Monday Night Football, we have the Denver Broncos at the Seattle Seahawks. A very interesting one here. Russell Wilson, of course, gets traded
Mhm.
from the Seahawks to Denver. Now he's back in Seattle playing in front of that insane crowd once again. So this probably will be the loudest that the stadium will be all
Ever
year,
been.
if
Yep.
I'm being honest. Because I think that the Seattle fans just have nothing but love for Russ. You know what I mean? So I
Mhm.
think they'll yeah, of course, like they'll be happy to have him back, but then once the game gets started, but it may just be a very long and ugly season for the Seahawks. So it's at least
Yeah.
they get a fun week one game with Russ. But uh, as far as the Seahawks side, there's not as much to say as far as I'm concerned than
Mhm.
the Denver side. Potential starters, Rashad Penny, as far as I'm concerned, only because of the Kenneth Walker injury and the hernia
Right.
situation. I think from a pure volume standpoint, kind of like Damian Pierce, it's
Yeah.
not a great matchup. It's not going to be good matchups all season long. But Rashad Penny, when given the opportunity with volume, has
Mhm.
been Studley at times
Yeah.
when he's healthy, of course.
Yes.
So he's kind of borderline. I would be on the side of not starting him in this week. Now, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, two very consistently good wide
Mhm.
receivers, do not have Russell Wilson throwing them the ball. Would you feel comfortable starting either one or both?
That's a great question, and I think I lean with I feel more comfortable in DK than I
Yeah,
do in Tyler, and I think just because Lockett thrived off of those deep bombs from Russ, and you're not going to get that from Geno Smith. So I think it's a much different quarterback. I think DK feeds more off of those quick slants, and he's a yard after catch guy. So I
oh,
think
yeah,
that's what you're going to see, and I think DK is not as impacted as Tyler Lockett's going to be. So I feel very comfortable with DK, but that's about as far as I go in Seattle. I think to your point, I also don't feel comfortable starting Penny just yet. I think if I'm starting anyone, it's got to be just DK.
yeah. I am just kind of like with like Amari Cooper. I am a really big fan of Tyler Lockett, so it'd be
Yep.
hard for me
Yep.
to just bench him. But at the same time, you just have to look at the practicality of it all. Like, it's
Yeah.
just how viable is he going to be? Again, I think like Seattle is going to be often playing from behind, so that could potentially help like the pass volume there.
Yep.
But it's just I just think a lot of the weeks is just going to be like you're just going to hold your nose and like
Yep.
wish for the best there,
Yeah. 100%.
because like the ceiling clearly isn't there that Lockett had, but from a pure like pass catching upside, I think there is some there. But for me, I would remain bullish on Metcalf, especially. But I think
Yep.
Lockett, just like Penny, is still a solid player to have on the
Mhm.
top of the bench, ready to throw into a flex if needed. But yeah, so I'm with you there overall. Now the Broncos, very exciting offense. You got
Yep.
Russ, you got Javante Williams, even Melvin Gordon. This could actually be a pretty interesting spot for like a Melvin Gordon game.
Yeah.
Jerry Judy, Cortland Sutton. Uh, where are you at with this offense? Would you feel comfortable starting those wide receivers? Um, how about like Melvin Gordon? Do you think he could be a potential flex play if needed, or not quite yet?
I I want to see what that 1A, 1B backfield really does look like, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
think we've heard that for a long time. It could be a 50-50 split. It could be a 60-40 split. Melvin Gordon comes out and says they want Javante to be the man, but yet reports are that it's still going to be a split backfield. There's just so many reports that, I mean, I'm starting Javante clearly because the potential and the upside is there more for him. Um, but I would much rather start guys we've been talking about all night tonight, such as Chase Edmonds, Ramondre Stevenson, Kareem Hunt. I would feel more comfortable about going with some of those guys than going with Melvin Gordon.
right.
Everybody else on that Denver offense, though, between Russ, Jerry Judy, Cortland Sutton, and Javante, I'm not hesitating. I'm
Absolutely.
absolutely starting him, and I think it's going to be a statement game for Russ. So I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, no, I think that the 1A 1B split is definitely a very intriguing thing to see. Like, is it 60-40? Is it 70-30, 55-45?
Mhm.
I think if you're like kind of thick in the woods as far as bye weeks go, I think this matchup would be a good spot for Gordon. But I just think because you have so many options here in week one, I would not be ready or willing to throw him into a starting lineup just yet. Um, Even though it would be a great matchup and opportunity for him. But Javante Williams, obviously, you're firing him up. But yeah, that's a really good point you bring up. I am very curious to see what that exact split looks like, and it may be a little
Yeah,
bit skewed this week because it's Seattle. You know what I
I
mean? If it was like a more
I
competitive
agree.
contest, it may be a little bit less there, but we'll see. But yeah, so I think we did a good job of running through all the matchups, a lot to look out for. But yeah, so we obviously covered a lot of information, and this week is a little bit more unique in that like every team is playing, and that won't be the case every single week. So we really do have just a wealth of options
We
in
do.
this for first round of games. But yeah, I'm very excited for everything. Appreciate you coming on. So Lobo, at this time, why don't you just tell the people where they can find you and what kind of content you got coming out?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Lobos FF10 on Twitter. I'm always on there talking football, not football, just there for fun. Any sort of football takes. Sit back and enjoy the show. Love talking. Ask away any questions you have. I'm a writer for FF Face Off. I've, as I mentioned earlier, I do have my Alphas of the Week tweets that come out once a week. They will be coming out every Tuesday night, and that's just my version of stardom. So really is guys that I'm not anticipating they get 1, 2, 3 finishes, but I'm thinking they are going to outproduce some guys that are really going ahead of them. And like I said, it's some streaming options. It's some of the guys who I really think are going to have a great week. So that's it. And Steve, it was a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. It's always great to talk ball with you, and I'll see you on those Twitter streets, of course, and in the many leagues that we are in together. So I
That
do want to wish you.
absolutely.
That's right.
Yes.
So I'll wish you luck at least this week. But when we're playing each other, not so much. Even though I love you. But yeah. So Lobo, appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate your insight. You really bring a lot to the table. So I just appreciate you. So yeah.
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 Anytime, Steve.
So best of luck to you, and best of luck to your Cowboys, of course, and then to all the teams out there. Very exciting week. Football is finally here, so we got Lobo and myself, Fantasy Ladder. Best of luck this week, and keep climbing, everybody.